What's up, everybody? This is your boy Ken, aka MrGentleman, your host of MrGentleman Like That podcast. And this week's sponsorship is from Newsly. Newsly is a all-in-one audio super app for iOS and Android. It picks up web articles about the most trending topics on the web at any given moment and read them to you in a natural human voice. For the first time in ever of the internet, the entire web becomes listenable, all in one place. Browse articles from topic choose, start playing, start scrolling, and start listening. You can follow any topics as you specifically as you like, from sports, science to Bitcoin, even for the Kardashians. It will find you on the latest article and you read them to you out loud. And they have podcasts as well. Explore trending podcasts from over 50 countries. Our podcast, MrGentleman Like That podcast, is on there as well. Yes, it is. Shout out to Newsly for that. I started using it as my default podcast app. Download and use Newsly for free from www.newsly.me or from the link in the description. Use the promo code MrGentleman that I will also put in the description and receive 1 month free premium subscription. So you already know, y'all, download Newsly now. Check it out. Support them, y'all. This is your boy Ken, aka MrGentleman, your host of MrGentleman Like That podcast, and enjoy the show.
You are now listening to MrGentleman Lifestyle Podcast. Chill!
Hello, everybody. This is your boy Ken, aka MrGentleman, 1/4 of the Premier Boys podcast, and your host of MrGentleman Lifestyle Podcast. Welcome to another new episode of MrGentleman Lifestyle Podcast. Hope all is well. And today is a very special day. Today is the 5-year anniversary of MrGentleman Lifestyle Podcast. And how do I feel about this? I'm pretty shocked. I'm not going to hold you. I never thought my show would be here, let alone will be here for 5 years. You know, that is a major accomplishment. You know, I've been through a lot of trials and tribulations when it comes to the show. You know, Spotify taking the show down. Many people rejected the show. People did not give the show a chance. Many times I wanted to give up because I felt like the show wasn't progressing, or also due to personal reasons. But sometimes I just look at the show and made me realize, why was I doing this in the first place? And moving forward to almost 30K downloads, 203 episodes being played on 80 countries, 64 guests that came on the show so far, and many more to go. Over 40 podcast platforms that I'll be able to get appearances on. And if you know me, I'm not big on being on other people's platform. I got social anxiety. I'm a shy person. But getting out of my comfort zone and going to other people's platforms is really growth, you know. And I grew a lot compared to when I first started the show to doing the show 5 years later, and now being like an inspiration to others who want to start a podcast. And though people telling me that because of you that you had me kept going, you know, it really means a lot. And y'all the reason why I continue to make more episodes of MrGentleman Like the podcast. And I just want to say thank you everybody that took the time and listened, rated, supported, told a friend, got me on the charts, and it never gave up on MrGentleman Lifestyle Podcast. From the bottom of my heart, thank you, everybody. And y'all already know what I do on the anniversary episodes. I talk about my podcast journey from when I first started, January 20th, 2019, to where we at now, and also what the next step for MrGentleman Lifestyle Podcast. I will also listen to all your anniversary messages. If y'all know, every year I do not listen to nobody's message until the episode air. So just like everybody else, I'm just going to sit back, relax, and listen to the anniversary message around the same time as you. And I just want to start off and thank everybody that sent in the anniversary message. It really means a lot. And I thank y'all. I appreciate each and every one of y'all. And y'all already know what to do. Sit back, relax, and I'll be right back. Happy 5-year anniversary to MrGentleman Lifestyle Podcast. Chill!
Hey, how y'all doing out there? This is Fiordalisa White. Came through to MrGentleman Lifestyle Podcast to come and wish my boy Ken a happy anniversary. I can't believe it. It's so fast, right? Well, believe it, man. You've been doing your thing for a whole another year, and I wish you nothing but the best. Keep doing what you're doing. Keep pushing. Keep positive, keep this alive, and I'm going to keep supporting you because that's what I do. One.
Hi, just want to give a shout out to MrGentleman's podcast. I'm a fellow podcaster, but I follow him and he's awesome. His podcast is so entertaining. So I recommend to anyone out there listening to his podcast, tuning in. And congratulations on your 5th year anniversary.
My name is Mama D from the podcast Pedals of Support, and happy 5-year anniversary to MrGentleman Lifestyle Podcast. Ken, you are a support to every one of us in the indie podcast community, and I am so proud of you for reaching a huge milestone, 5 years. Here's to 5 years more. Love you.
Hey, MrGentleman, it's Nicole from the Doom Generation podcast, calling to wish you a happy anniversary and thank you for all your support.
Hey Ken, this is Chris from Today We Laughed and Learned, and I just wanted to take a minute to congratulate you on this amazing accomplishment. I mean, holy cow, 5 years of the MrGentleman's Lifestyle podcast. Well, here's to 5 more. Ken, you're an incredible guy. You've had our back since, day one of our podcast, and we want you to know that we really, really appreciate it. Happy anniversary, Ken.
Hi, I'm Sonia.
And I'm Jessica.
And I'm Dawn Marie.
We're opinionated lushes.
And happy 5-year anniversary to MrGentleman Lifestyle Podcast.
Don't worry, Ken. You've been through worse.
Welcome back, everybody. Welcome back. And at this time, the time for MrGentleman Facts quote of the day. And today's quote of the day is, success do not always happen overnight. So be patient and the hard work will be worth it at the end. And I say this because people always think success happens overnight. People always think you have to rush to be successful when in reality, in order to be successful, you just take a whole bunch of hard work, a whole bunch of commitment, a whole bunch of patience, a whole bunch of sweat and tears to that one big break will happen, and that one big break will change the rest of your life. So always remember, success don't happen overnight. Just be patient and continue to work hard, because your time is coming and it will be worth it at the end. And that is today, Mr. Gentleman Facts, quote of the day.
Happy anniversary to Ken, aka Mr. Gentleman, from Leo, Mike, and Kevin at the Films and Fermentation Podcast.
My name is Rafael Moran of the Geeky Dad Podcast, and I'm here to say happy 5-year anniversary to the Mr. Gentleman Lifestyle Podcast. 5 years is a pretty long time. Some people don't even have, marriages that long. But, congrats. And let's keep this going. I want to wish you a 10-year anniversary as well. Maybe even 15, 20. Let's keep it going. All right, Ken? Good luck.
What's up, guys? My name is Zaya from The Zaya Show, and happy 5-year anniversary to the Mr. Gentleman Lifestyle Podcast. What's up, guys? It's Zaya from The Zaya Show, and happy 5-year anniversary to the Mr. Gentleman Lifestyle Podcast. Hey guys, it's Zaya from The Zaya Show, and I just want to wish a happy 5-year anniversary to the Mr. Gentleman Lifestyle Podcast. Keep doing great things. What's up, guys? It's Zaya from The Zaya Show, and I just want to wish Ken a happy 5-year anniversary to the Mr. Gentleman Lifestyle Podcast. You killing it. What's up, guys? It's Zaya from The Zaya Show, and I just want to wish Ken a happy 5-year anniversary to the Mr. Gentleman Lifestyle Podcast. What's up, guys? It's Zaya from The Zaya Show, and I just want to wish Ken a happy 5-year anniversary to the What's up, guys? It's Zaya from The Zaya Show, and I just want to wish a happy 5-year anniversary to the Mr. Gentleman Lifestyle Podcast. Keep it going, bro.
Hey, it's Rena, host of the Better Call Daddy Show, and I wanted to wish Ken, aka Mr. Gentleman Lifestyle Podcast, a happy 5-year anniversary. Cheers to putting yourself out there, getting over that fear, and telling your story, because your voice is needed.
My name is Hazel Lloyd Rose from Birmingham, UK. Happy 5th year anniversary to Mr. Gentleman Lifestyle Podcast. May you continue to prosper.
Hey, my name is Lady at Denim, and I'm the host of the Lady at Denim podcast. Happy 5th year anniversary to Mr. Gentleman Lifestyle Podcast. Mwah.
Hello, everybody. This is your boy Ken, aka Mr. Gentleman, and I am the host of Mr. Gentleman Lifestyle Podcast. And this commercial break is brought to you by Mr. Gentleman Lifestyle Podcast. On Mr. Gentleman Lifestyle Podcast, we interview many guests about their life journey, pretty much where they come from and where they at now. Also promoting their brands or whatever they're doing at the time they come on the show. We also have the host talk about personal stories about himself and everything that he's been through. And also we have fun conversation about anything music, anything old school, relationships, wrestling, and many more. And y'all can tune in to Mr. Gentleman Lifestyle Podcast every Sundays at 12 a.m. We are also on every Thursdays at 12 a.m. for Spin-Up Series Thursdays, where we have all of Mr. Gentleman Lifestyle Podcast spin-off series all in one day, where we have a conversation about music podcasts every first Thursday at 12 a.m. The Old School Show with myself and the Star Roddy Rod every fourth Thursday at 12 a.m. And we have Date Night Talk podcast with myself and Miss Vanna B every second and third Thursdays at 12 a.m. And y'all can tune in to Mr. Gentleman Lifestyle Podcast on Anchor, Spotify, Apple Podcasts, iHeartRadio, Amazon Music, The Pods, and many more. Or y'all can check it out on the official website of Mr. Gentleman Lifestyle Podcast, www.realmrgentlemanlifestylepodcast.com, www.realmrgentlemanlifestylepodcast.com, and tune in every Sundays and Thursdays at 12 a.m. for Mr. Gentleman Lifestyle Podcast. Thank y'all for tuning in to this commercial break of Mr. Gentleman Lifestyle Podcast. Back to your regularly scheduled program. Cheer!
What is up, y'all? It is your favorite Virgo host, Shakita Johnson from Chronicles of a Virgo podcast. And I'm coming through today to wish Mr. Ken a happy 5-year pod anniversary. Happy anniversary, Mr. Ken. I wish you nothing but much more success, happiness, and growth with all of your future endeavors. I am so grateful to have met you in this podcasting environment and so grateful to call you a friend. Thanks for all your support. Thanks for all that you do. And I look forward to many, many more episodes from your podcast. And I look forward to collaborating with you again in the future. Again, happy pod anniversary, Mr. Ken. Peace out, y'all.
What's up, guys? It's your girl, Victoria J. from 12th Street Talkback, here to wish you, Mr. Gentleman Lifestyle Podcast, a happy 5th year anniversary. Thank you so much for your love and your support to the podcast community. I wish you many, many more blessings in your future endeavors. Happy 5th year anniversary, Ken. Peace and blessings to you, my brother.
Hey, it's Linnea, host of Unpacking the Box podcast. Happy 5-year anniversary to Mr. Gentleman Lifestyle Podcast. Ken, you are so amazing. Congratulations. You are inspiring. I truly sit in admiration of you and your hard work, your dedication, your consistency. I also sit in gratitude of your continuous support of me and my platforms and everything that I do. And you know that I'm here for you and I love your content. I love everything that you do. And I know that you will continue to do great things. And I wish you the absolute best. Peace and blessings.
Hey, it's Ash Lav of the Lavender Listens podcast, and I'm here to say happy 5-year anniversary to Mr. Gentleman Lifestyle Podcast. I'm so happy to help celebrate you on this huge milestone, y'all. The homie Ken, he's one of the most supportive pod friends there is. All right. He's connected so many of us in podcasting through his support. And for that, I personally say thank you. Thank you so much. Keep up the amazing work that you're doing with your shows and as well as your network. And friend, invite me on a time or two, okay? But congrats again on 5 years, and we're looking forward to so many more years from you. Congratulations on 5 years, Ken.
Mi gente, it's your girl Michelle S. from the It's Me Shell podcast, and I want to wish a very happy 5th year anniversary to Mr. Gentleman Lifestyle Podcast. I absolutely enjoy the topics, conversations, and my favorite when Ken, aka Mr. Gentleman, drops his daily quotes. It's the positivity that we've all been missing. Keep doing your thing, and I cannot wait for our collab. It's going to be amazing. Peace and love. I'm out.
Hey, Ken, this is Jessica, host of the Just Get Hired podcast. I appreciate you always supporting my show, and I want to congratulate you for 5 years of the Mr. Gentleman Lifestyle podcast.
Welcome back, everybody. Welcome back. And today we are celebrating 5 years of Mr. Gentleman Lifestyle Podcast. If you want to ask me on my first year of doing the show, that was I ever going to make it to 5 years doing this, I probably would have said no. But I'm not going to hold you. We've been through many trials and tribulations, from people not believing in me or the vision, for people just they want to give us a chance, for us just want to give up many times, especially when we at our lowest. But one thing that I can't do, I can't quit, I can't stop doing something that I love, because I know something big was going to come out of this if I was to keep going. And that's what I did. I kept going. And honestly, I owe that to y'all for me to keep going, pushing me to want to be better, pushing me to open up more. Because if y'all was in the early season, you listen from the early season to now, I would not open it up at all. Now, I want to thank y'all for that. Thank y'all for pushing me to be better than I am now. And 5 years later, we had almost 30,000 downloads, 203 episodes of the Gentleman Lifestyle Podcast, including 3 spin-off series: the Old School Show, myself and the Star Rider Ride, a Conversation About Music podcast, and Date Night Talk podcast, myself and Miss Vanna B. We are being played on 80 countries. We are being played on 30 podcast platforms. I've been on 44 guest appearances. And if y'all know me, I'm a very shy person. I'm socially awkward. And the fact that I went on 44 podcast platforms, that we know that I get out of my comfort zone and I'm growing every day. And I'm not gonna lie, I am proud of myself because of that. Multiple time #1 on Good Pods for Society and Culture, documentary, top 100 shows, and top 100 episodes. We also was on Apple Podcast charts on other countries. And honestly, for that, thank you everybody that really believe in the Gentleman Lifestyle Podcast. And because of y'all support, I can't stop, So for that, from the bottom of my heart, I thank you. Why did I started podcasting? The reason why I started podcasting, because one thing that I used to love radio. I used to like to listen to the radio and listen to music, because one thing about me, I love music, and music played a big part of my life. I also like listening to many interviews that they have on the radio. Even though I was young and a kid, I would do listen to interviews. I remember one time as a kid, they showed a commercial about a build your own radio commercial, where you gotta hook it up to a radio. And once it's hooked up, you switch it to AM station and you hear yourself on the radio. And when I saw that commercial, I really wanted that thing. That one thing that I always wanted, but I never got. And even to this day, I always wanted that, that thing, But the reason why I never really pursued radio during this time was I wasn't confident in my voice, because growing up, I was dealing with speech problems. And because of that, I was bullied a lot as a kid because of that. People would talk about how I look, people would talk about my speech. They would call me meaty names, stupid, dumb, retarded, or and other bad names that you couldn't even imagine. And because of all those things, it messed up my confidence growing up till I was an adult. And it affected me a lot more than many people know. It was hard, but I knew as I got older, I wanted to find my identity. I wanted to break out of the thing that's been bothering me my whole life. And so I started going for things I want. I became a new artist, and I had a music with my friends. We had a song that got played on the radio one time. Later, I became a club promoter for multiple years. Then I went and done one thing that I always wanted to do. I became an actor. Done 2 off-Broadway shows. But then one day, in the year 2018, I had an opportunity to be on an online radio show. Me and my bro, Enriquito Sands. Originally, the premiere boy was supposed to be first. But during this time, we didn't have an idea what we were going to do. We didn't know who was going to be on the show. And also, one main important thing, we didn't have the money. I felt like if we was supposed to be on the radio, I felt like we needed money. And that was something at the time that we did not have. So later that year, a friend of mine, she started a podcast show. So I had and I asked her, how do you start a podcast show? And she told me about this app called Anchor. And she said it was totally free and you could start your podcast show from home. So when I heard that, I was really impressed. And I was like, yo, I'm finally about to do something that I always wanted to do, start a podcast. But of course, this was September 2018. I pushed the idea back. October came. I pushed the idea back. November came. I got a name, MrGentleman, like that podcast, but I didn't have a show. Pushed the idea back. Summer came. Still pushed the idea back. Early January came. Still pushing it back. Then one day, I was supposed to go to Time. I was a club promoter at Time during this time. January 19th, 2019, I stayed home. And I'm like, you know what? I want to start this podcast show. So I had to find my friends and I asked them, do y'all think I should start a podcast show? All of them said yeah. So I recorded the show, the first episode that night basically was the Gentleman Like That Podcast, episode 0. And it was a short episode and I was done recording, but I felt like something was missing. So I added music to the show. During this time, I didn't know better during this time. I thought it was a good idea. I added music to the show because I felt like there was something missing to the show. And then I released the episode and people heard it and people loved it. The one thing people loved about the episode was the music. So I thought I had a thing going. And everybody really liked the show. So the first episode was done. Episode 1 came, which, I was trying to figure out what to do for episode 1. Originally, on the early MrGentleman Like That Podcast episode, we had news on it. And I remember the first news topic I had was Jesse Starlett got, beat up. That was the first news topic, and I recorded that. But for some reason, when I recorded it, I didn't like how it came out. And I didn't like that news didn't fit my show. So I scrapped that out. And because during this time, of course, I was still trying to find what is MrGentleman Like The Podcast actually about, because I didn't know what it was about. So last minute, I hit up my second older sister, Coach Daya Powell, for her to be on the show. And she said, yeah, she was the first guest. It was a very short interview, probably one of our shortest interviews I ever had. Basically about her podcast, her upcoming podcast show, because she's also a podcast host. She got a podcast show called Coaching Out Loud with Daya Powell. And that was episode 1. And it was a good turnout. It did really good. Episode 2 came with Love is Love, Valentine's Day episode. And I had 2 versions of this episode. The first version, I recorded it, came out really terrible. And it was really bad. So I released it, but it was really bad. It got no plays at all. So when I came home from work, I was like, yeah, I'm gonna do this over. And I'm I'm taking this serious. So I re-recorded it and I basically made a better version of it. You know, then Valentine's Day episode came out and then I opened up about my past love life. You know, and pretty much Valentine's Day pretty much became a tradition. After that, it became a thing. It became a thing every year. Then episode 3 came. And the episode was called Wins and Losses. Basically, I spoke about the wins and losses in life from my point of view. And then I had a guest, which was my bro, Aaron Quito Sand. And he talked about his wins and losses. And he talked about his business at the time, Shop by Sands. And y'all got to know him on episode 3. Episode 4, originally, I'm supposed to have a guest for episode 4, but this was one of the episodes where I vented. The episode was called I Got Something I Want to Say. And honestly, this is one episode that I was not proud about because I was pretty much venting and ranting. And I wasn't proud of this episode at all. But for some reason, everybody enjoyed this episode. It done really, like, it got a lot of plays. I was wondering why it got a lot of plays. I was just venting over nothing, and it was, yeah, let's just say Mr. Gentleman Like the Podcast the early days was wow. Now that I think about it, it was wow. Episode 5, I got my good friend Pam on the show, and she's an entrepreneur, and she would pretty much talk about her entrepreneur journey and basically giving tips about entrepreneur and stuff like that. And like I said, this was probably my first successful episode of Mr. Gentleman Like the Podcast during this time. I think one of the most successful episodes of season 1. So episode 6 came and I pretty much made a listener choice episode, which was pretty much a filler episode. I pretty much created questions and people had to ask me questions, but yeah, it didn't do that much. It didn't much anything. Episode 7 was the WrestleMania prediction episode, and originally the prediction episode was just me. And when I first recorded this episode by myself, it came out bad, and it felt like something was missing. I felt like I couldn't do no wrestling prediction episode by myself. It felt weird. It felt weird doing it by myself. Even though I know a lot of podcasters that do it by themselves, but I know for me, it felt weird. So my bro Aaron Quito San became like a permanent guest host every time we did wrestling prediction episodes. And the first one was WrestleMania. And during the early days, Anchor was like a major problem during my podcast journey, where every audio, it would mess up. This was one of those episodes that messed up a lot. Kept cutting off. And yeah, early Mr. Gentleman Like the Podcast was a struggle. Trust me, it was a real struggle. But the one thing I remember from this episode was after the episode was recorded and we found out that Nipsey Hussle was killed. So yeah, that was like one of the worst things I heard, you know. And yeah, and it just sucks, you know. So episode 8, we had my sisters Tawana and Dale Powell on the show. You know, Coach Dale Powell was on our first episode, but she came back for this episode along with my older sister, and they pretty much talk about their nightlife journey because they were club promoters at first, and then they became entrepreneurs. And originally, both of them were supposed to be the first guests on the show, but instead we only got one of my sisters for the first episode. But it was good having a conversation with both of them. And this was also another highlight episode of season 1. So episode 9 was the mid-season finale of Mr. Gentleman Like the Podcast. And I started a segment called The Countdown Show, where I count down 10 songs that were played on the show, and we count them down. And when it comes for a topic, we used to discuss the topic every episode. And for this one, it pretty much was just a filler. Basically, we just talk about the top 10 Billboard countdown during that time, and that was really it. And the Countdown Show became a thing for 6 episodes before it was discontinued which I will talk about that a little more later when we get to it. So we came back for episode 10, and we had my bro, long live the Chief Mighty Mel, on the show. He was my first face-to-face interview that I had on the show, and we pretty much talk about, his music journey and entrepreneurship during that time, and that was a really dope conversation. Episode 11, we had the Mother's Day episode, where basically it was an episode dedicated to the mothers. But then during this time, I was going through depression during this time, because of the job that I was dealing with, and I just wasn't happy where I'm at, and a lot of things, I kind of went to a slow start place through the time, and it just messed me up. And it was hard to continue the show for a little bit. So after I had a bonus episode was for my birthday day. After that episode, I took a short break just to get myself back in order. But then when I came back, I came up with an idea for my first spin-off show. And with Long Live the Chief Mighty Mel gave me the idea to start this spin-off show. And the spin-off show was called New Music / Unsigned Hype Fridays. And this spin-off show was about, I would play new music that came out on Friday, and then I would play an unsigned hype artist, that basically unsigned hype artists, and I would interview them on the show. That was the original version of a Conversation About Music podcast. But that first spin-off show didn't work out as planned. It got a lot of bad reviews. People didn't like the idea. People said that was too much music and less talking. I didn't have no guests on the show because a lot of them felt like I was too new to interview them. It was a lot. It was a lot, and the idea just did not fall through. We only have 5 to 6 episodes. And yeah, that show was pretty much a disaster. So I ended up canceling it after episode 6. And I was disappointed because I really wanted to have a show where I help artists. That was my vision. Well, let's get to the original vision of Mr. Gentleman Like the Podcast while we're here. So the original vision of Mr. Gentleman Like the Podcast was to have all my close friends come on the show, and I interviewed them about their brands and what they're doing. And it was more pretty much promoting what they were doing. It wasn't really to get to know them like how the show is now. It was just basically helping my people get their brands out there, and that pretty much was it. But as time progressed, the show started to change a little bit later. So I pretty much came back full time after this. Episode 12 of Mr. Gentleman Like the Podcast. We had my bro Trophy T on the show, who is a skater, who is an entrepreneur, and we pretty much talk about, everything that he was doing. His shades line, Highlight Shades, which I think it's a different name now, but during the time it was called Highlight Shades, and everything that he was doing. And it was instant interview, because we were doing the street, basically. We were doing this in the street. We would pretty much walk around doing an interview. A lot of stuff was going on, around us during that time while we were doing the interview. So it was a pretty different experience. It was pretty fun. I like a lot. It was pretty fun. But also, this was my first explicit episode too. Cause I'm ready for the show. I wasn't trying to go explicit. I was trying to make sure nobody cursed, but you can't really control everybody what everybody's saying. So I just accepted after a while, So yeah, so this episode 12 was pretty much my first explicit episode. Then episode 13, we had Aaron King sitting back on the show, and then we also had the Star Riding Ride on the show. And this was pretty much the Premiere Boy podcast pilot episode. Basically, we discussed everything that we've done from the music journey to club promoting, and we announced that Premiere Boys were premiering in the fall after this episode. So this was pretty much the backdoor pirate to the Premiere Boys podcast. Basically. Episode 14, we had my sister on the show, author Sharice Powell, and we spoke about her first book, Life is What You Make It, Don't Make Life Make You. And yeah, that's a good book. Check it out, y'all. Episode 15, we have Wrestling Prediction episode, the SummerSlam Prediction episode. Episode 16, we had Bronx Boom Boom on the show. She is an entrepreneur. She is a model. She was the first guest that I did not know personally. She was a long-time social media friend, and I like what she was doing, so I went on the show. And I gotta say, this was a pretty, dope conversation, and I like talking to her. I feel like in the early days, I feel like now I feel like there's more things to ask her now. It would be dope to have her back on the show for a future episode. Cause we definitely need a follow-up interview from the Bronx Boom Boom. Episode 17, I got an actress by the name of Miss Molly Pond, and we spoke about her web series and everything else that she was doing. I remember this episode really well. When we started the interview, she was really shy, but the way she was talking, she didn't sound shy. She did really great during the interview, And this was also one of my favorite interviews for season 1. And then episode 18, we got the Countdown Show Volume 2. Basically, we discussed, I pretty much spoke about, the time where I was dealing with depression from my job that I just mentioned back in May during this time, and pretty much stuff like that. Even though I was trying to open up a little bit during this time, but I still fully wasn't opening up too much, And that was the season 1 finale. And then I took a break from the Gentleman Like the podcast, and I started the Premiere Boy podcast. Then on November 23rd, 2019, season 2 of the Gentleman Like the podcast premiere. Episode 19, we got Aaron Keto Sands back on the show, but this time he was a guest host, and he interviewed me about everything that I was doing and many more. And I think that was a little preview of what's to come for him, which he is a podcast host now with the show King Talk with Aaron Sands. Check it out, y'all. Episode 20, I got my best friend Shadiqua on the show, and we pretty much want to know catch-up episode, and she's an entrepreneur. And we pretty much talk about her entrepreneur journey and stuff like that, which was during that time a fan favorite during that time. Episode 21, we got Survivor Series prediction episode. Episode 2, we got Star Roddy Ride's first solo episode. And for this, we mainly talk about music, because during this time, he was known as DJ Retro. He was a DJ, and we pretty much talk about music from what he did as a DJ, and basically R&B music, because we spoke about music a lot during the episode. Episode 23, we got my cousin, Nana Powell on the show, and she is the actress, she is a director. We pretty much talk about her acting journey, basically, and everything that she was doing, which was a pretty cool episode during that time. And episode 24 was pretty much the start of a shift for Mr. Gentleman Like the podcast. So episode 24, we got Miss Felicia, Miss Pot of the Soul on the show. And this was a face-to-face interview, and I'm not gonna lie, we did this interview over probably 4 times, because it didn't come out right. But one thing about this interview, that it was really deep. She opened up a lot about what's going on in her life and everything like that. But you notice on future episodes, I ask people tell me about your life journey. Where were you growing up? It started from then. This episode was one of the reasons why I started asking people that in a future episode. I know this was one episode that was so deep, and I really was, deep by this episode. Episode 25, we got an author and a podcast host by the name of Chrissy Christ. This was my first podcast crossover, and she is the host of Physical Podcast. And this was another deep episode. And as time went on, the more guests I get, the more deeper the conversation goes. This was another deep episode, and it is maybe these first two episodes started the shift of Mr. Gentleman like the podcast a little bit. Things started to change a little for Mr. Gentleman the podcast. Then we have a 1 year anniversary episode. Then episode 26 was the Royal Rumble prediction episode. Then episode 27, we have Jay Siobhan on the show, and she was the host of Surviving the Journey podcast, which was another deep episode that changed Mr. Gentleman like the podcast. And like I said, I gotta thank Felicia White, Chrissy Creight, and Jay Siobhan for helping change the shift of the show. Because after those three interviews, it made me open my eyes like, yeah, I gotta do more about what to do with the show. And I felt like this was kind of the start of, I wanted to start telling people stories a little bit. This was pretty much the start of the show shifting, but it didn't shift too much until later. Then episode 28 was the Love is Love 2020 episode, Valentine's Day 2020 episode. Episode 29 was the mid-season finale, Countdown Show Volume 3, the old school Countdown Show. And this is one Countdown Show that I love because it was I had nothing but 80 countdown songs on this list, and it just put a certain vibe to the show, and I really enjoyed this Countdown Show. It was like one of my favorites. I just love I love this selection for this episode, and everybody loved the episode as well. So after that, we took a short break, and a lot of things were happening during this time. First thing first, I got my first guest appearance. I went on Jay Siobhan's show, Surviving the Journey, as a guest. And the interview itself was really good, but we had many issues with Anchor doing this recording on both our parts. Anchor was really messing up the show, and that was like probably one of the bad parts of the episode. But one thing that I do want to do, I want to have a do-over interview with Jay Siobhan. I feel like we both deserve a do-over interview, and yeah, I feel like an updated interview today would be really dope. So yeah, let's do a Jay Siobhan. If you're listening. Also, what happened during this time is I joined a podcast family by the name of the COOP, the Circle of Outstanding Podcasters. And this podcast network was founded by Angelica from A Little Bit of Everything With Me, and the Coupon Green Pen, hosted by CQP Moment. And how we got together was we was all in the Anchor podcast group. And what we do in that group was pretty much just post our episodes and let everybody listen to it and stuff like that. And it was another girl who is a founder in that group, but the group that she was doing, it didn't have no real direction. Like she didn't know what she was doing. She was just doing this just to do it. So shout out to Angelica and Coupon Cream Pen. They put it upon themselves where they wanted to start a podcast community where we can help each other out and network and be on each other's platform and grow each other. And I gotta say, they play a big part during this time. During this COVID time, they helped my show grow heavy, and they helped me get out of my comfort zone as in to jumping on other people's platform. So I want to say thank you, Angelica and Coupon Cream Pen, for really helping me out and really helping me get out of my comfort zone and really just being the person I am today. So once again, I thank them for that because they really helped me a lot. Also happened during this time was COVID happened, March 2020. And I'm not gonna lie, COVID was a really hard time, I was dealing with a lot through COVID. One day I was in the house. I had a sore throat. I thought it was something worse. And I ended up getting an anxiety attack that led into a panic attack, which lasted from 11 p.m. to 6 a.m. And honestly, I thought during that time I was having a heart attack. I went to the hospital. Doctors were like, "What you doing here?" Because she thought that if I didn't have COVID, I didn't need to be here. And they pretty much just gave me, medicine, hoping that it would help, but it made things way worse for the next couple of weeks. And yeah, COVID was a really, really hard time, And during that time, I didn't podcast at all during that time because I was going through a lot. I think I put out one episode, which was a COVID episode, but it was really short, and then that was pretty much it. But then when I did came back, I did the episode over, and I turned it into 2 parts of it. It was coronavirus part 1 and coronavirus part 2, and that's how that came about. Then episode 32, we had Sharice back on the show, and she spoke about 2 other books that she has, Life What You Make It Part 2 and The Sweetest Taste of Almond. Get those books. Originally, she was supposed to be the first episode of second half of season 2, but since COVID happened, all things changed. Also supposed to have another guest on the show during this time, and she wanted to do a date topic. And she felt like I need to talk more about relationships on the show and stuff like that. And I just told her, like, how would I fit that? I always do one thing for now. Like, how would I fit that? But then I started thinking, like, maybe I should start a new segment that's strictly about relationship and dating. And the idea that came about was the dating talk segment. Basically, where I had people come on the show, and we talk about many dating topics. But then that idea got put on hold because somebody had the same name. So I didn't want to use that name when somebody had the same name. So I changed the idea and came back to it. So episode 33, we had the WrestleMania prediction episode, which was the COVID WrestleMania. Then episode 34, I changed the name from Date and Talk to Date Night Talk. And I had my first guest for Date Night Talk segment, which was Miss Cece, who is a good friend of mine. And she just released a podcast during this time called From the Mind of Cece. And I pretty much had her for Date Night Talk. She was the first guest for Date Night Talk. Basically talk about, relationships, stuff like that. Then Date Night Talk continued with episode 35, which was Miss Vanna B. If you know her from feature episode, yeah, she was a part of the original Date Night Talk segment. And yeah, that was probably one of my favorite Date Night Talk episodes. Shout out to her for that episode. Episode 36, which dropped the same day as episode 35, we have a podcaster by the name of Brianna Lightfoot Smith, and she had a podcast show called Black Girl with Purpose, and this was a really good interview. I met her through the Anchor group, so shout out to her. Episode 37, we had another Date Night Talk episode of a girl by the name of Lily. She is a social media friend, and this was probably my first long episode that I had, my first episode that went up to an hour, because in the past, none of my episodes went to an hour. This was probably the first one that went to an hour. Then episode 38, we got a podcaster by the name of Natalie Armstrong. And this was an interesting episode. She spoke about every religion that she was dealing with. It was a really educational episode. Then episode 39 was the Countdown Show Volume 4, which was also my birthday episode. And it was a top 15 countdown show. It was a pretty interesting episode. Season 3 premiered on June 28th, 2020. We started with episode 40, and we had Banger Official on the show, and she was a music artist, and we discussed her about her music journey. Then episode 41, we had Anthony from the Beautiful Feet podcast, which was a really dope interview. And then after that, I went on his show. After that, so it was a good podcast crossover. Episode 42 was the Road to Recovery episode. Basically, I spoke about how I've been feeling since dealing with COVID and many more. So that was like probably my first personal episode. But like how it was today, how it's so deep, it's just as it started to get, I guess, deep, but not OD. I wasn't OD deep yet. Episode 43, we got Angelica for a little bit Everything With Me podcast. This was our first interview on the show. Episode 44, we got my homeboy from junior high school on the show, Luke Dollars, who is a hip hop artist. And this was a dope interview. I really like his new flow. Yeah, he a dope artist. I gotta check him out. Episode 45, we got the Coupon Queen Pen on the show. She is the host of CQP Moments, and this was a very fun interview. Episode 46, we got the story of Ken the Promoter. Of course, I'll talk about my nightlife journey during this time, and pretty much where I was at during this nightlife journey. And during this time, I kind of said that I was done with the nightlife journey because I was uncertain where things were going during the 2020 era. And that was that episode during that time. But then after this, something weird happened. I got my first copyright infringement. And I was wondering why did I got a copyright infringement? And they removed one of my episodes, which was episode 23, episode with my cousin on it. At the time, I didn't take it serious. I just like, maybe they just took it off. So I didn't pay it no mind, and I just kept going, kept going, playing the music and stuff like that. So episode 47 was SummerSlam prediction. Episode 48 was Michelle Miller on the show. She is the host of Ben Toys on the Mic. She is the actress, and she done many things. And this was a really dope interview. Yeah, this was a good interview. Episode 49 was the Captain Show, Volume 5. And during this time, my show got taken off Spotify for the first time. And I was like, yeah, I gotta figure out what's going on, man. And it got me a little upset for me a little bit, but I also said things gotta change as well. I was upset, Spotify took my show down for the first time. Anchor kept acting up, and everything was just going wrong during this time. It's 2020. Everything was just going wrong. Also I dealt with post-night dream, my throat messed up. Everything was just going wrong during this time. So I said to myself, your thing gotta change. So what I did was I brought a mic. I started taking this podcast thing serious. I brought a mic, I brought headphones, and I started to take things serious. I downloaded an editing app, and I started to add my shows. I started to use Zoom for recording, and things started to get a little better. I started to switch up everything. I just started to take the podcast thing serious because 2020 I lost my job, and things were very uncertain with me, and the podcast was the only thing I have at the moment. So I was just like, yeah, I started to take this serious, and I started to go harder on the show. So I took a month break so I could get everything together. So when I come back, it would pretty much be like a new start. So episode 50, I had my friend Pam back on the show, and she discussed more of her entrepreneur thing, and she was doing Forex during this time. And during this time, since the change with the audio sound different, sound better, I edited stuff. This episode done really good, really good. It got me on the chart for the very first time on the Apple Podcast charts. And I was really impressed by that. I was like, wow, I was shocked. So like, how my show got on Apple Podcasts? So I was really shocked and really proud of myself after that. Episode 51, I have Broma on the show. He is the host of the Broma show, and this episode was a shocker good episode. A lot of people liked this episode. It done really good, and it grew really quick. Episode 52, we had Amber on the show. She is an entrepreneur, and she have a brand called The Shade Shop. It was good talking to her. I know her from the nightlife days. You know, I promoted her birthday at Club Catcher during that time, and yeah, and that was a cool episode. The episode 53, we have a podcast host by the name of Gia Jackson on the show. She hosted 3 podcast shows during this time. She did that. JB Cigarette podcast and Decon podcast, and this was one of my favorite conversations during the second half of season 3. This was a really good conversation. One of my favorite, actually. Like, she was so laid back and very cool. It was very cool, you know. I liked this episode a lot. Then one day I wanted to start a new show, and I wanted to start a spin-off show again. And the show idea I had was I Love Music podcast. Basically, it was supposed to be a show about discussing anything music, old school music, basically. And I wanted to have a co-host for the show. So I called up my friend, the star writer Rod, to start the new podcast show called I Love Music podcast and stuff like that. And as we discussed ideas, a lot of old school stuff was mentioned. So I was like, yeah, so I'm gonna go sleep. I sleep on it. I wake up the next day, and I said to myself, the old school show. Let me tell Roddy. So I hit up my bro Roddy, and I told her like, yo, we're gonna name the show the Old School Show, and we pretty much gonna talk anything old school. You know, from movies, TV shows, music, and anything else old school. And this show started on October 25th, 2020. And the Old School Show got 21 episodes. We have Eric Kingston Sands as the host, Magna and Marsha as the host, and Miss Fana B as the host. During this time, the Old School Show was one of the most popular spin-off series that I have for Mr. Gentleman Like the Podcast. It was doing crazy numbers during the first 2 seasons. And yeah, me and Roddy, we really did amazing with this Old School Show. So yeah, shout out to the Old School Show through going on to this day. We will be back with new episode of the Old School Show in February. So look out for that. A part of the spin-off series Thursday. Episode 54, we brought back the Date Night Talk segment, and the next guest we brought back Shadiqua for Date Night Talk. Episode 55, I got my good friend from junior high school, Naya, on the show for a Date Night Talk segment. Then episode 56, we got Amber back on the show, but this time for Date Night Talk segment. Episode 57, we got the Survivor Series prediction episode. Episode 58, I got my good friend Lacey on the show, and she is an entrepreneur, and she does hair, and we spoke about her business. She is somebody that I do know in real life. I met her at my very first club promoting event at Oshina. Yeah, shout out to her. Episode 59 was the season 3 finale, and also the very last episode of the Countdown Show, Volume 6. Then after this episode, with no more Countdown Show. Yeah, it was pretty much the end after that. Yeah. And after this episode, Spotify took my show down for the second time. And once that happened, I got really, really depressed about the show. I didn't know where the show was going to head after this. I didn't know what to do. I was really just willing to give up because the thing was that I felt like I said earlier in the episode, that I wasn't confident in my voice. And I used the music to be the voice of the show, when in reality, the music should not have been the voice of the show. The voice of the show should have been me. I should have been more open. I should have been more me. You know, I should have gave them more me than the music. And I feel like in the early days, I feel like I regretted that part. You know, I feel like I should have been more open from the beginning. But yeah, that was one thing that I wanted to change, you know, about the show. And we have. We will get to that part. So season 4 premiere on January 17th, 2021. We had episode 60 with Cynthia from our collaboration station podcast. And this was a really dope interview. I really got to know her and many levels. She's really dope. I also was on her show as well, so this was a podcast crossover. And I really enjoyed this interview. But for season 4 premiere, we had a 2-day premiere episode. And the second premiere day episode was episode 61, which was the Date That Talk pilot episode. And we brought back Naya back on the show. And she was the guest host of this episode, basically asking me questions about relationships and stuff like that. And I'm not gonna lie, she did a good job doing this episode. And this was supposed to be the pilot episode of Date That Talk. Because after this episode, I was supposed to start back Date That Talk again. But this time, I was supposed to bring a guest, a co-host during this time. But since there was too much thing going on during this time, I scrapped the idea. For Date That Talk for now. Because too much was going on around this time, you know. So I kind of scrapped the whole idea for now. Episode 62, we got Royal Rumble the prediction episode with King Talk, and this time Long Live the Chief Mighty Mal joined in on the episode. Episode 63, we got Love is Love, Valentine's Day episode 2021. Episode 64, we got Paige, host of the Badass Fabulous podcast, which was a really dope conversation, which just was one of my favorite conversations this season. Episode 65, we got Hazel I. Rose on the show, who is a pop artist, and she opened up about mental health, about psychosis, and many more. And this was a really really deep episode, and a lot of people who heard this episode was really, were really deep by this episode. And let's say Hazel I. Rose touched many people on episode 65. Yeah, it was a really deep episode. Episode 66, we had Sam, who is an entrepreneur, who take pictures, and who I know who is a good friend from high school. And this was a good conversation having with one of my bros. The episode 67, we had the biggest WrestleMania episode, which was WrestleMania and the NXT Stand and Deliver prediction. Episode 68, we got Miss Vanna B back on the show, but this time she having a solo interview, and this was a really deep episode from Miss Vanna B. And I think after this episode, it made me realize, like, yo, I feel like Vanna could be big, could do big things. I feel like Vanna could do big things after this episode, but I kept that in mind until later when we get to the episode 69. We have the reset and rebuild episode where I pretty much told everybody that we're taking a break from the show and everything, and I pretty much rebranded the show heavy. And I spoke about this recently on Star Time podcast and Better Call Daddy podcast about the rebrand of the show, when I took like a month and a half break, where I added every episode from episode 68 to 0. I took every music off the show completely, no more copyright music on the show. And I just rebranded. I changed the flyer, and I changed everything, And this week, you know that I would start to take things really serious about Mr. Gentleman like the podcast, and really was just wanted to go harder. And also, the fact that I have copyright music. One guest that I really wanted on the show, she turned down an invitation to be on Mr. Gentleman like the podcast because I was playing copyright music on the show. And during this time, I didn't understand why that was a problem. I didn't think it was a big thing. Honestly, I didn't think my show was big enough to get taken down by Spotify and Universal Music Group. I wasn't thinking during that time, but as time went on, I thought to learn that was a really bad idea. Because honestly, I played music on the show because I wanted the show to have a radio feel. I wanted the show to have a radio feel, and wanted people to have good conversation and enjoy some good music. But I guess I did it the wrong way. I should have played full song. That was my fault, and I take that L. That was probably one of the biggest L I could take for the show, and I could take full responsibility for that. But so the show got rebranded. No more music. Show completely different. Jim at the podcast was strictly about conversation, and this was more the time of me start to open up about me more. So we came back from break, and episode 70 came out, and we got Rolanda Powell on the show. She is an author. She's also my aunt, and this was a really good interview, and she really opened up about a lot of things. And this episode during this time became a top 5 episode of Mr. Gentleman like the podcast. So yeah, this was a really good episode. In episode 71, we got Miss Cece back on the show, which pretty much was her first solo episode, and talk about everything that's going on with her and her life and stuff like that. Then we had my 34th birthday episode, which became my biggest episode ever on Mr. Gentleman like the podcast, which pretty much is still the biggest episode to this day. Which was big, crazy numbers that I never saw a day in my life. Which the second biggest episode was the Old School Show, episode 5, Nickelodeon episode with Magna and Marsha, which also was one of the second biggest episodes to this day. So I was impressed around that time when my numbers was growing crazy, and I didn't even know why. Then on June 6, 2021, we released our second spin-off show called A Conversation About Music Podcast, where we talk about anything music. This was basically the revival spin-off show from 2019, New Music / Unsigned Hype Friday show. And, Conversation About Music was basically a music-based show. On this show, we had Twin Turbo B Wise on the show. Hazel I. Rose was on the show twice. Blue Dollars was on the show. Banger was on the show. Miss Vanna B was on the show. And the Star Rider Ride. And Jen Uriah Star was on the show. Right now, we got 14 episodes of Conversation About Music podcast. The last episode was the last episode of the Gym Like the podcast during the time. Yeah, y'all can catch a conversation about music every first Thursdays, a part of Spin-off Series Thursdays. Episode 72, we got Mariah on the show, and how Mariah came on the show is Star Rider Ride recommended her to be on the show, and she is an entrepreneur and a YouTube content creator, and we spoke about everything that she was doing, which was a pretty big episode around that time too. Then episode 73, we got Jonathan Harris on the show, who is an author. He wrote 2 children's books and another book as well. This was a really dope conversation. This was my second favorite interview for this half of the Shoutout like the podcast. The episode 74, we got Miss Felicia White on the show, back on the show. Then episode 75, we got Angelica back on the show from A Little Bit Everything With Me, and this was a really deep episode. She opened up a lot during this episode. She spoke about her winning the Latin award, and opening up a lot about everything that's going on in her life. And I gotta say, Angelica, I'm proud of you for everything that you are doing. Keep doing amazing things. Then this is August of 2021, and this podcast app wanted me to join a podcast app, and the podcast app is called Good Pods, and they've been hitting me up for a long period of time, but I kept turning them down. I felt like I didn't need their platform at the moment, but once I lost Spotify, I needed a platform to fill that void and stuff like that. So I joined Good Pods, and the thing about Good Pods was it was a lot of amazing podcasters on that platform, you know, and I was just like, dang, how am I going to match up to all these podcasters? You know, it made me less confident. I'm not going to hold you, because I wasn't sure what I would get myself into when I joined Good Pods. And I ain't gonna hold you, it was a lot. You know, it took a long time to build my show on Good Pods. A long time. Literally almost 2 years to build with the Gentleman Like the Podcast the way it is on Good Pods now. And just say thank you everybody that I met on Good Pods and that showed the Gentleman Like the Podcast love. You know, it really means a lot. Thank y'all. Then on episode 76, we got the star writer Rod back on the show, and we pretty much had his solo interview, and let's just say that he was talking about a lot. It was a fun conversation, but he was talking about a lot. Yeah. Episode 77, we got Nanya back on the show, but this time we talk about everything about her and everything that she was doing. And also during this time, she released her podcast show called What the F is Nana. You know. Episode 78, SummerSlam prediction episode. Episode 79, we got Miss Vanna Bella on the show. She is a poet, and a lot of people like this episode as well. Only issue is the audio was messed up on my side, and yeah, that was my fault. I know next time I definitely gotta bring you back on the show, and we gotta have another interview. Then the season 4 finale of the Gentleman Like the Podcast, episode 80. I got something I need to say, and this was pretty much the real first time that I really opened up about stuff that's going on in my life. I spoke about being bullied. I spoke about things that I've done, and I gotta hold you. I think I opened up too much that I couldn't really finish the episode. That's how hard the episode was to do, and plus I was opening up really for the first time, you know. So it didn't feel right, but yeah, it was hard during this time, but yeah. But of course, you know, as time went on, I grew. I started to get comfortable with opening up on the platform as time went on. So the season 5 premiere was November 14th, 2021. And we started on episode 81. We have Penelope Rose on the show. She is a podcast host of All in Water podcast. And we spoke about, mental health and so many dope conversation on this episode. But the audio was messing up during the episode. This would have been one of my favorite interviews this season if the audio was not messing up. Episode 82, we had a Survivor Series prediction episode. Episode 83, we had my first comedian on the show. We got Miss Kendra Crump, and we spoke about her comedic journey, and she was really funny. And also I got to shout out to her because she was really grinding. She went on multiple podcast platforms, like a lot of podcast platforms. She was definitely on the grind, so shout out to her. Episode 84, we got Anna K. Haxton on the show. She is a host for Change Be Bold. And this was a dope conversation. We also did a partnership on our first giveaway, and that was fun. I definitely have to do more of those. And this was a good episode. Episode 85 was the big Christmas episode. The all-star Christmas episode where we have Angelica, Christy Christ, and Cynthia on the show, and we just talk about everything Christmas. It was a really fun episode. Episode 86 by 2021. Hello 2022. And this was basically just reviewing everything that happened in the year 2021. Then I caught COVID. I caught COVID on December 31st, 2021 until January, the end of January basically. And dealing with COVID was a long journey, I was dealing with a lot, from chills, headaches, I couldn't sleep, throat was acting up, chest pain, and many things. And it was a journey, man. COVID was a wild journey, but of course I went through it, drank a lot of water, walk around, took some vitamins and stuff like that, and that helped me a lot during that time, But yeah, but COVID is something that I definitely don't want to have again. So the next episode after that was the 3rd year anniversary episode of the Gentleman the podcast, which was also my first number 1 on the pocket chart ever. And so I got my first number 1 for society and culture because of this episode. And you don't understand how happy I was, because that was, at the time, that was my goal. My goal was to be number 1 on a podcast platform. And I was number 1 for society and culture for the first time on the pod. And when I got that first number 1, I was like, wow. I was really shocked about it, I was happy about it, and plus, I felt like it was a journey because I was trying to get them more for literally for 6 months, and I kept getting knocked down. But I didn't give up, and I just kept going, and that was a good moment. But then I wanted to aim higher, and I think that when that goal after that, I wanted to get number 1 for top 100 shows. That was the next goal because during that time, it was only one podcast show that went to number 1 who was black, and that was the Red Dove podcast. And I wanted to be at least the second, and that became a goal of mine. But it was hard because it was so much dope podcasters on the chart during that time, killing it. And it was so hard, to get to that. But that became a goal. So I just keep pushing and kept pushing, keep growing my network, and just kept going. Episode 87, we have a model by the name of Definitely Unique on the show. This was a good interview. She also was a singer as well. Multi-talented girl, man. Shout out to her. Episode 88 was the Royal Rumble 2022 episode. Episode 89, Rosie, the Haitian Mama. She is the host of Mama's Life podcast. Shout out to her. She's always supportive and everything that I do. Thank you, Rosie. And fun fact, Rosie and Definitely Unique episode was supposed to be an episode before the 3rd year anniversary, but since I caught COVID, I had to push those 2 episodes back. So COVID pretty much changed a lot of my plans. Let's just say that. COVID changed a lot of my plans. So episode 90 was Love is Love 2022. The Valentine's Day episode. And then episode 91 with Queen Janae, who is a model, and I met her when I was a promoter at Taj, and I think she was a promoter at Taj as well. And she does many things. She does music, and she does many things, And she really, and the conversation was really good. Shout out to her. Episode 92, WrestleMania prediction. Episode 93, I spoke about my COVID journey, which everybody. This episode was one of the biggest episodes of Good Pod during this time, and the episode did really good. I guess everybody really. When it came to my personal episode, I feel like a lot of people really relate to it, because a lot of my personal episodes does really good, and this was one of them that did really good. The episode 94, we got Tourette on the show. She is the host of Kingdom Chat podcast. This was one of my favorite interviews this season. That she spoke about, how she got saved. She spoke about the podcast show, and to drop in so much knowledge, and I really enjoyed it because she was dropping so much knowledge. This episode, shout out to her. Episode 95, we got an author by the name of Elijah Rose, and we spoke about her books, and she is a long-time social media friend, and this was really cool. Also, the third spin-off show came out during this time called Date Night Talk Podcast, and I wanted a co-host for Date Night Talk. A lot of people wanted to be co-hosts. Naya wanted to be a co-host, but I felt like for the show, me and her didn't have as much chemistry to hold a show together. I had other people who wanted to be a co-host of the show. Penelope Rose wanted to be a co-host, and other people I know. I had two people I did who I wanted to be on the show. I already know who I wanted to be a co-host. I had two people in mind. One I know was my good friend Magna. I wanted to be a co-host for Date Night Talk. And the other one, which was my first choice, was Miss Fountain B. And I wanted Miss Fountain B because she's been on every show that I had, every spin-off show that I had, and she know how to start a conversation. I know that she was serious about doing the show, and plus she wanted to start her own podcast, and I felt like this was a way of her to start her own podcast. But since she wanted to do that talk, she enjoyed doing this. I feel like she was a perfect fit for the show, and I'm glad that I got her as my co-host. For Date Night Talk, we had 9 episodes at the moment for Date Night Talk, and Date Night Talk been doing really good. It became one of the biggest spin-off show now. Currently, the biggest spin-off show now. Everybody really enjoyed the topic that we have for Date Night Talk, and they like how me and her, the chemistry between me and her. So, Ms. Fana, thank you for joining me on the Date Night Talk journey, and it's good to have you as a good friend. And we're gonna continue to put out more episodes of Date Night Talk. Y'all can check out Date Night Talk every second and third Thursdays, part of Spin-Off Series Thursdays. Then also, during this time, I got my first online article with Shoutout LA. And shout out to Angelica, because she recommended them to put me on this article. So if it wasn't for her, I wouldn't be on the article. So thank you, Angelica, for recommending them to be on this article. But then I noticed they started to pick up with the show. They started to change for the better for the show. I turned 35 during this time. I brought an episode called "The Reason Why I Love Podcasting," because another podcast, who shall not be named, had an episode called on the show about something about podcast suck and stuff like that. And he started throwing shots about many podcasts and stuff like that. So I made an episode in a positive response to that. And basically say how much I love the podcast community, how much I like supporting them, and how much I want to see everybody win. And it was all genuine, honestly. It was just me just telling how I feel about the community. But also during this time, Spotify officially put me back on their platform. We managed to work things out, and I am officially back on Spotify. And from this day forward, I would never take it off Spotify no more. So, let's just say I learned my lesson, and second and third chances does happen. So, so I'm grateful to be back on Spotify, and grateful that my show is starting to grow on Spotify, again. So, episode 97, we got Amanda from Dane Would Be the Death of Me on the show. This was another episode that I really enjoyed this season. Amanda, definitely a dope person. I wish she was continuing to do Dane Would Be the Death of Me. I was waiting for a new episode because I do want to be in your show. So shout out to Amanda. Episode 98, we have our first Money in the Bank prediction episode. And stuff like that, Then episode 99. During this time, a lot of stuff started to happen. I started to go through deep depression of things that going on in my life. A lot of stuff happened during this time, and I just wasn't happy with a lot of stuff. And it went to the point that I wasn't able to record my show and everything. It was a hard time during the time. I already went through depression. So this was the last episode for a while, called The Next Move, episode 99, and it was just basically talk about everything that was going on from life and when I had him. This was like the point where I felt like this was pretty much the end of MrGentleman, the podcast. Where I feel like I wanted to quit. You know, I feel like I feel like I can't do this no more. You know, it was a lot, and I was going through a lot of depression during the time. And I didn't do nothing. I wasn't on social media. I wasn't listening to podcast shows. I wasn't supporting nobody. I was at a really dark place. I wasn't talking to no friends like that. Cause me and my other friend wasn't talking during the time. So it was a lot going on during this time. And I was just struggling on many things, you know. Just wasn't happy, you know. And it was a tough time. And so I just took a step back from everything until I figured myself out on what I really need to do and what is my next step. So one day, the end of August, you know, I started to pick myself back up again. I started to think slowly, started to get back in order, and I started to come back. And I came up with 2 bonus episodes called "Don't Call It a Comeback," basically just telling people that it was time to come back. It was time to come back. It was time to have my strong comeback. And after that episode, I knew that I was coming back. Season 6 happened September 18th, 2022, which I can honestly say season 6 was probably my best season that I ever have. I feel like I manifest like, I needed a strong comeback. And I felt like season 6 was the strong comeback that I needed. So the first episode was episode 100, which wasn't really the episode 100 episode, but it was more of a 100 episode celebration. Because by his hair, I was already on 150 already. That's why people were probably wondering, like, how Kim was on 200 episodes and he just had a 100 episode already. I wasn't on 100 episodes at the time. I was on 150 episodes, but this was just a celebration later on the 100 episode, because 100 episode was not on the main series. It was on the spin-off show. But I got my sister Cynthia Powell back on the show, and I felt like it was appropriate to bring her back on the show because she was my very first guest. So I brought her back for episode 100, and it was a really dope interview. She opened up a lot more. I felt like this was the interview that I should have when she first came on the show, because she opened up a lot, and I really enjoyed it. Then episode 101, What Is Your Dream? Basically was a personal episode discussing my dreams and everything that I wanted to do. It also led me my first #1 for Top 100 episode. The episode 102, author Sharice Powell came back on the show and just discussed all her latest books. And she was the first #1 episode that I had for a guest. She was the first #1 episode that I had for a guest. So that was like a big accomplishment because I never had a guest. I never had an episode where who guest was on the show, they came to #1. And this was probably one of her best interviews that she had, because she opened them way more than she did. You know, I'm proud of her for everything that she's doing, you know. Then episode 103, Aaron Keith came back on the show. We had a series called The Brotherhood Crossover, where I had an episode of his show, and he had an episode of my show. First, we had an episode of his show where we basically talk about MrGentleman, like the podcast, where I was at in that like journey, and he spoke about me and Roddy's situation during this time and stuff like that. And I was pretty much open about everything, you know, and stuff like that. Then he came on my show and we discussed my like journey on his side, King Tosan's, and everything that's going on in his life. And this was a really, really good episode. It was one of Aaron King Tosan's best episodes. Episode 104, we spoke about purpose, which pretty much self-explanatory, you know. Episode 105 with fear and anxiety, which was one of my deepest episodes that I probably ever did on this show. You know, I opened up about all my fears, opened up about my anxiety, everything from childhood anxiety, from COVID anxiety, everything. And I can say, like, this was probably one of my deepest episodes. I feel like this episode was one of the episodes that should have got more props. I feel like this episode should have got more props. But this was one of the most deepest episodes that I have. Episode 106 was a filler episode. Episode 107 was Survivor Series War Games. Episode 108, we have the Thriller 40 episode, which originally this was supposed to be something else, but instead I found out Thriller 40 anniversary was out, and I wanted to have somebody to show, so I brought my bro, Long Live Cheap Money Mal, because me and him, when it comes to music, me and him could talk for hours, and I felt like it was the perfect person to bring on this episode for Thriller 40, because we both loved the album Thriller. It was a dope episode, especially when we talk about music. Episode 109, we had Sierra Coco, host of Wet Lounge, on the show. We spoke about everything that was going on with the Wet Lounge and what to come for her. You know, shout out to Sierra. Episode 110, which was the mid-season finale, we had Jalen on the show, and we pretty much introduced Jalen to the world. She is a poet, she is a funny girl, she is a film critic, and she is a pretty dope person, you know. I love having her on the show. This was the first time having her on the show, and you're going to see her on the show many more. Then after that, we had the 4-year anniversary episode, which was last year, which this anniversary episode last year was really great, you know. And this was the part where we never spoke about. So episode 111, we got the Royal Rumble prediction episode. Episode 112, we got Love is Love 2023. Episode 113, we got Why I Never Give Up. And this was one of the episodes that I was going through this. I felt off. Doesn't say that. During this time period, I felt off. You know, and the thing was, I didn't know why I felt off. I just felt off. You know, it is one of those things where you were feeling good one minute, and the next minute you just feel sad and depressed, and you just didn't know what to do. So I pretty much made an improv episode called Why I Never Give Up, and basically telling people how I felt. It was something that I felt for a month. I didn't know how to bring it out, and I got shout out to Big Brother and J Dot, because they hit me up and they're like, "Yo, just say how you feel," and stuff like that. Those are usually the best episodes, and Jay, Big Brother checked up on me. The Big Brother advice, he checked up on me to say, "I hope you're alright," stuff like that. So hearing that, it made me ready to know what I wanted to talk about for that episode, and that's how that episode came about. So I have to shout out to them for pushing me to do this episode. And yeah. Episode 114, we came back with a new segment called the Top 20 Countdown Show, which, if y'all remember, I did have a countdown show in the past where we just talk about where we had news and stuff. But this time I wanted to talk about my favorite top 20 countdown thing. And we had Jalen back on the show. We spoke about our favorite movie, part 1. And after this episode, I felt like me and Jalen had a good chemistry. So we made it as a recurring thing. So yeah. So this was the first one. Episode 115, we had the WrestleMania prediction episode. Well, the big WrestleMania prediction episode. And we have Aaron Quito Sands, Long Live the Chief Mighty Mal. We got Ange from Let's Talk About It podcast. And we got Mighty Mal friend, 21 Cal, the Source King. And this was probably one of the funnest wrestling prediction episodes that I ever did. Because it was so much of us. And it was really fun. And I never really had a big guest before. This is probably one of my biggest the most guests I have in the show, and it was fun. So yeah, I can't wait to do episode like this again. Episode 116. I got a podcast host by the name of Shaquita Johnson on the show, and she is the host of Chronicles of a Virgo. And she opened up about, her podcast show, about everything that she was going through. And I'm not gonna lie, this was a really deep episode. Like one of my deepest episodes I have on the show, and one of my favorite episodes this season. And I just want to say thank you, Shaquita, for opening up on this episode, and thank you for also having me on your show as well, because she also had me on her show as well for the episode called Main Character Energy, and that was a really dope episode too. Thank you for always supporting me, Shaquita, and thank you for being you. Keep doing you, and happy anniversary to you as well. She also had an anniversary earlier this week, so shout out to her. Episode 117, we got Victoria J on the show. And she also opened up about things that are going on in her life. She is the host of 12 Street Talkback. She was about everything in her life as well. And this was also a deep episode. She also another supportive person that come on the show. And thank you, Victoria, for always supporting me as well. And always continue to keep doing amazing things. Keep killing it. This also was another of my favorite episodes this season. Thank you, Victoria, for killing it as well. Episode 118, we had self-doubt and the struggle with self-doubt. And this episode was an episode that was supposed to be the season finale for the season, but I put it back because it was something that I felt in my heart during this time, so I wanted to talk about it. And this was another one of those deep episodes that I did, and it was something that I just needed to talk about. Episode 119 was part 2 of the story of Ken the Club Promoter, Nightlife Memories, and I pretty much gave an update on my nightlife journey, basically, and where was I at during this time. And for some reason, this episode was one of the biggest episodes this season. I was really shocked that this episode grew crazy. Like, this was like the second biggest episode this season. I was shocked about that, Then we had my 36th birthday celebration. Then episode 120, Long Live Chief, my name came back on the show. Pretty much the update episode, basically about, how he doing the premiere with podcast, his podcast show that he got coming out, and being a father. Because my bro became a father in 2023. Shout out to Long Live Chief, my name Also, episode 121, we got the lady of Opinionated Lashes on the show, Jessica, Sonia, and Don Marie. And this was an interesting conversation. We spoke about a whole lot of stuff. We spoke about their show. We spoke about COVID. We spoke about mental health. This was a lot of laughs and a lot of serious moments in this episode. And I really enjoyed this episode. And thank you, the ladies of Opinionated Lashes, for having me on your show as well. It was really a fun, interesting conversation. It was a really fun, interesting conversation. Episode 122, we got my good friend Lexi LaDon on the show. And she's a friend that I knew for a very long time. And I wanted to have her on the show because she's an entrepreneur, she's a teacher, she supported me to generate the podcast. She was one of those guests that's supposed to be on the show season 5, but things just kept getting pushed back. Finally got on the show for season 6. And yeah. And the last guest for season 6 was episode 123. We got Zaya from the Zaya Show on the show. And, that's a little bro right there. We spoke about all his podcast journey, everything he's doing, from him graduating and many more. This is a dope dude. Let's just say this dude is the future in the podcast game. He go be big. And Zaya, keep getting your thing, bro. And then the season 6 finale, the episode 124, the next move part 2, which was another good episode, basically became a new thing in the finale called the next move. We're meant to generate the packet we headed for season 7. So during this time, I figured myself out what to do with Mr. Gentleman Like the podcast. So I started a new block on Mr. Gentleman Like the podcast. I wanted to grow the show a little bit more. And we started to move the show to Thursday nights as well. And we made a thing called Spin-Off Series Thursday, where we have all our spin-off shows all in one night. A conversation about music podcast was every first Thursday. Day Night Talk podcast was every second and third Thursdays. And the Old School Show was every fourth Thursdays. And that became a thing. But one thing I noticed was after the season 6 finale, Mr. Gentleman Like the podcast only been kind of up and down when it comes to listeners and stuff like that. You know, I mean, of course, I do breaking records and stuff, but they just haven't been the same. So I pretty much tried to figure things out. Took a break. I came back in September for the season 7 premiere, September 3rd, 2023, and the first episode was 125. Breaks over, basically telling people that I'm back and breaks is pretty much over and stuff like that. Which honestly wasn't the original first episode. The Break Over episode was supposed to be a bonus episode, and the first episode was supposed to be the countdown show. A lot of things change. You know, season 7 so far, like season 7, nothing was pretty much going as planned for season 7 at all. So 126, Top 20 Countdown Show Volume 2. Jamming back on the show, and we had the second half of our favorite movies. Episode 127, we all needed that little push. And this is pretty much just like how the title said, that we all need that little push even when we're down, you know, and that's how I felt during this episode. Not only that I was inspiring myself to need a little push, but I wanted to push everybody else to have that little push as well. And that was pretty much what that episode was about. Episode 128, the artist support, basically about me supporting others and stuff like that. 129, we got Wayne Fryman Ross on the show. She's the host of Better Call Daddy. She used to work on 911, Jerry Springer, and many more. This was a really dope conversation, and I really enjoyed her on the show. And yeah, this was a really fun conversation. Thank you, Raina, for coming on the show. Then episode 130, we have Survivor Series War Games. Aaron keeps on saying Ange back on the show. On 131, Raphael Morale from the Geeky Dad podcast was on the show. And we spoke about, you know, all his shows and a lot of fun stuff. And this was a pretty fun episode, which also was another episode that went to number 1 for Top 100 Show. 3 episodes that when I have a guest went to number 1. Sharice was one of them. Victoria J went to number 1, and Raphael episode went to number 1. And that was interesting because I was on his show as well. And for Geek Dad, the NL 2023 episode, and that episode went to number 1 as well. So shout out to Raphael, shout out to the Geeky Dad, Geeky Dad After Dark, and the Movie First Kids show. Keep doing your thing. Then episode 132, we had the episode called Growth, which was the official 200 episode. And honestly, when I found out I did 200 episodes, I didn't think that I was gonna go that far. Honestly, like I didn't really have a limit on how many episodes I was going to do. I didn't know that I love what I was doing, and I knew that I wanted to go far. And now that I went to 200 episodes, I want to do more. I want to make sure I get 2 more episodes. You know, I want to do as much as I can. You know, 133, the Top 20 Countdown Show Volume 3. Our favorite Christmas episode, Jalen back on the show. Basically, because I taught 20 Christmas episodes, and that was all the episodes that we have so far of Mr. Gentleman Like the podcast. And here, all the podcast appearances that I've been on. Shout out to the podcast, Surviving the Journey, hosted by Jay Chavon. A Little Bit of Everything with Me, hosted by Angelica. From the Mind of CC, hosted by Miss CC. CQP Moments, hosted by Coupon Creepin. The Beautiful Feet podcast, hosted by Anthony. Our Collaboration Station, hosted by Cynthia. Where Did the Rabbit Go, hosted by Marco. King Talk with Aaron Sands, hosted by Aaron. King Talk Sands. Good Vibes Only, hosted by Felicia White. Drunken Idiots Podcast. Chronicle of a Virgo Podcast, hosted by Shaquita Johnson. The Math Debaters, hosted by DeAndre Robinson. The Vandalorian. Trophy Talkback, hosted by Victoria J. Star Time Podcast, hosted by the Star Rider Rod. Things About Us Podcast, hosted by Willie and Fiona. Chris Gallum, hosted by Kendra. The Penny and Elisha, hosted by Sonia, Jessica, and Dawn Marie. The Simplest Podcast, hosted by Amanda. The Geeky Dad Podcast, hosted by Raphael. And the Better Call Daddy Podcast, hosted by Raina Fryman Ross. And thank you all y'all for having me on your platforms. All of them was really dope conversation, and it was really fun. But the question that comes to everybody's mind is, what is next for Mr. Gentleman Like That Podcast? And what next is, we're going to continue to grow the show. Hopefully, we could have more anniversary episodes, 10 years, 15 years, 20 years, and so on. More episodes. Maybe they get to 500. They get to 1,000. I want to help others more. I want to help others grow their show. I want to help others grow their platform. I want to be there and continue to push the podcast community to be their better self. To be there so they go step up their game and be better. Instead of bashing each other, throwing shots low key, let's grow together and support each other. Not just say it, but do it. Also want to get on more podcast charts. I want to get more of my shows number one on multiple podcast charts. I want to get back to number one on Good Pod Chart for top 100 shows. I've only been number one 4 times for top 100 shows. I want to be number one again. I'm not going to lie. That is a goal. Also, hopefully this year, I want to get nominated for a podcast award, and I'm going to win the podcast award. That's probably going to be that's one of the biggest goals I want this year. I want to be nominated for a podcast award, and I'm going to win one. And I know that it's possible. The thing is, anything is possible when you put your mind into it. Anything is possible when you manifest what you really want, and anything is possible when you don't give up. And yeah, anything is possible, y'all. And don't let anybody tell you different. Thank y'all for joining me on this podcast journey. And yeah, let's have many more anniversary episodes. And many more. And hopefully y'all continue to follow me on this podcast journey and follow me for many years to come. I'll be right back. Hello, everybody. This is your boy Ken, aka Mr. Gentleman. Now, I am the host of Mr. Gentleman Lifestyle Podcast, and this commercial break is brought to you by Mr. Gentleman Lifestyle Podcast presents Spinoff Series Thursdays. And Spinoff Series Thursday is the new home for Mr. Gentleman Lifestyle Podcast Spinoff Series. That brought to you shows like A Conversation About Music Podcast, The Old School Show, and Date Night Talk Podcast. And A Conversation About Music Podcast is a music spin-off series where we talk about anything music, from the current music scene and the old school music scene, where we interview many guests that's in the music industry and artists about their music journey. We have a segment game called The Face Off, which is a versus inspired game. And we have roundtable discussion about variety of music topics. And y'all can check out a conversation about music podcast every first Thursday at 12 a.m. Every first Thursday at 12 a.m. Now, the old school show that featured myself and the star Roddy Rod is a show where we discuss anything old school, from music, TV shows, movies, and many more. We also bring in guests to join in on the old school conversation. Y'all can check out the old school show with myself and the star Roddy Rod every fourth Thursday at 12 a.m. Every fourth Thursday at 12 a.m. And last but not least, we have Date Night Talk Podcast with myself and Miss Vanna B, where we talk about anything relationship related topics like love, dating, relationships, cheating, the good and the bad, and many more. And y'all can check out this spin-off series, Date Night Talk Podcast, every second and third Thursday at 12 p.m. So look out for MrGentleman Lifestyle Podcast Presents spin-off series Thursday, a conversation about music podcast every first Thursday. The old school show with myself and the star Roddy Rod every fourth Thursdays, and Date Night Talk Podcast with myself and Miss Vanna B every second and third Thursdays. And y'all can check out MrGentleman Lifestyle Podcast every Sundays for the main series and every Thursday for spin-off series Thursdays. And thank y'all for checking out this commercial break. And now back to your regularly scheduled program. Choo!
This is Bronx Boom Boom wishing a happy anniversary to MrGentleman Lifestyle Podcast.
Hi, it's Laquita with the Queen of Me podcast, and I want to say happy anniversary to MrGentleman's Lifestyle Podcast.
Hey, it's Danny from My Survivor Voice, the podcast. Congratulations, Ken, on 5 years in the podcasting game. I can't wait to see where MrGentleman's Lifestyle Podcast goes from here.
Hi, Ken. This is your favorite sister, aka Sister Chrissy Christ from a Fistful Podcast. And I just want to say I am so proud of you. And I just want to wish you another year for your podversary. And I want to say keep going, my brother. This is not the year to stop. This is not the year to slow down. We are in a good era in this podcast industry. And I just want to wish you nothing but the best and more years to come. And I love you so much. And I am so proud of you. And shout out to MrGentleman Lifestyle Podcast. Chill. And we out. Happy podcast versary, honey.
Hi, this is Cynthia with our collaboration station podcast and Listen and Learn with Me podcast. And I want to send a huge congratulations to you, Ken. Happy 5-year podcast anniversary. I have to say that I am extremely proud of you. You have done an outstanding job collaborating with others, sharing knowledgeable content on your podcast has been amazing to hear over these past several years. The humor that you share with others all across the globe has been outstanding. And I just really enjoy listening to your podcast and the growth that you have achieved over the course of this podcast. I wish you the absolute best of luck moving forward this year and many years to come. Again, congratulations and take care.
Hey, it's Angelica here from A Little Bit of Everything with Me podcast, and I want to wish MrGentleman Lifestyle Podcast, yes, you can, an amazing 5-year anniversary of your podcast. What the heck? Where did the time go, bro? Oh my goodness. This is exciting because who would have thought we would still be podcasting 5 freaking years of amazing content, all the hard work, all the behind the scenes, all the editing, all the guests, all the everything that we have to do. You made it 5 years. I cannot believe it. 5 freaking years, to many more years to come. I cannot believe this. 5 years. This is an amazing accomplishment for us indie podcasters. So Ken, thank you. Thank you so much. Thank you for allowing me to be on your show and share my stories. Thank you for having me. I cannot wait to be back. 5 years. Oh my gosh, to many more years to come. Thank you, buddy. Thank you for providing a platform. Happy 5-year anniversary. You are killing it. And to many more.
I just want to take the time to thank everybody for tuning into the 5-year anniversary episode of MrGentleman Like That podcast. Thank you for joining me on this journey. You know, I appreciate each and every one of y'all and all y'all support. Thank you to all the listeners, all the rating, all the shares, all the total friends, all everybody who's been a guest who got on the charts and many more. It really means a lot. And thank you for supporting me and my vision. If it wasn't for y'all, it wouldn't be possible. Thank you to all my guests that been on MrGentleman Like the podcast. Y'all all was amazing, and thank y'all for playing a big part of MrGentleman Like the podcast. And I'm gonna give my guests my flowers. I'm gonna name all 64 of my guests because all of y'all been amazing, and all of y'all deserve your flowers. Shout out to my guest co-hosts that play a part of MrGentleman Like the podcast. Shout out to Star Ride and Ride, who is the co-host of the Old School Show. Shout out to Miss Vanna B, who is the co-host of the Internet Talk podcast. Shout out to Aaron King Toxin, who is the guest co-host in the Wrestling Prediction episode. Shout out to Long Live the Chief Molly Mal, who is the guest co-host in the Wrestling Prediction episode. And shout out to Jalen, who is the guest co-host for the Top 20 Countdown Show. Thank you for playing a part in MrGentleman Like That podcast. Thank you for entertaining my audience with fun conversation and a lot of laughs and entertainment. Thank you for your commitment on joining me on this journey. And honestly, I wouldn't do it any other people. And I'm glad that I picked a good set of people to do these episodes with. So I want to once again thank y'all for playing a big part of MrGentleman Like the podcast. Shout out to my family, and my sisters, Tawana, Coach Dayelle, and author Sharice Powell for coming on the show. Shout out to my aunt, Rolanda Powell. Shout out to my cousin, Nana Powell. Shout out to every people who I know in real life, who I met in real life, who are long-term social media friends who came on the show. Shout out to Amber. Shout out to the Brown Boom Boom. Shout out to Elijah Rose. Shout out to Destiny Unique. Shout out to Felicia, Miss Positive Soul, host of Good Vibes Only Radio. Shout out to Jen Uriah Star. Shout out to Lacey. Shout out to Lex London. Shout out to Magna. Shout out to Marsha. Shout out to Miss Marty Pies. Shout out to Miss Cece from the Minds of Cece podcast. Shout out to Dollars. Shout out to Naya, host of What the F is Nana. Shout out to 21 Cal, the Source King. Shout out to Pam. Shout out to Queen Janae. Shout out to Shadiqua. Shout out to Sierra Coco, former host of the Wet Lounge and host of the Pinky Swear podcast. Shout out to Sam. Shout out to Trophy T. Shout out to Teres, host of Kingdom Chat podcast. Shout out to Bonavello. Shout out to Twin Turbo B. Shout out to Lily. Shout out to all of my co-op family, circle of outstanding podcasters. Shout out to Angelica from A Little Bit of Everything With Me. Shout out to Coupon Queen Prince from CQP Moments. Shout out to NK Hackerson from For Change Be Bold. Shout out to Anthony from the Beautiful Feet podcast. Shout out to Broma from the Broma Show. Shout out to Cynthia from Our Collaboration Station and Listen and Learn podcast. Shout out to Gia Jackson from She Effing Did That, JB Cigarette Podcast, and Decon Party Podcast. Shout out to Jay Siobhan for Surviving the Journey Podcast. Shout out to Michelle Miller for Mentors on the Mic. Shout out to Paige from Badass Fabulous Podcast. Shout out to Chrissy Christ for Fist Food Podcast. And shout out to my podcast friends that I met along the way. Shout out to Shaquita Johnson from Chronicles of a Virgo Podcast. Shout out to Victoria J from 12-3 Talkback. Shout out to Zaya from the Zaya Show. Shout out to Rosie, the Haitian Mama from Mama's Life Podcast. Shout out to Raphael Marav from the Geeky Dad Podcast, Geeky Dad After Dark, and the Multiverse Kids Podcast. Shout out to Raina and Friedman Watts from Better Call Daddy Podcast. Shout out to Penelope Rose from All in Wet Podcast. Shout out to Nellie Armstrong from Epistole a Pay Podcast. Shout out to Opinion Lashes, Sonia, Jessica, and Dawn Marie. Shout out to Brianna Lifer Smith from Black Girl with Purpose Podcast. Shout out to Ange from Let's Talk About It Podcast. Shout out to Amanda from They Will Be the Death of Me. And shout out to everybody who I met along the way, who I now consider part of the podcast family, part of the Mr. Gentleman Lifestyle Podcast family. Shout out to Baker Official. Shout out to B Wise. Shout out to Hazel Eye Rose. Shout out to Kendra Crump. Shout out to Jonathan Harris. And shout out to Mariah. Thank you, all y'all, for coming on the show and playing a big part of the Gentleman Lifestyle Podcast during the 5-year run. And once again, I thank y'all from the bottom of my heart. If y'all want to check out the Gentleman Lifestyle Podcast, y'all can check out the Gentleman Lifestyle Podcast every Sundays for the main series, and every Thursday for spin-off series Thursday, where we have shows like a conversation about music podcast every first Thursday at 12 p.m. Date Night Talk Podcast with myself and Miss Vanna B every second and third Thursday at 12 p.m. and the Old School Show with myself and the Star Fighter Rod every fourth Thursday at 12 p.m. Y'all can check me out on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, iHeartRadio, Amazon Music, Pods, and many more. Y'all can rate the show 5-star rating on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Good Pods, and Podchasers. The more y'all rate the show, the more people know about the Gentleman Lifestyle Podcast. If you want to be a guest on the Gentleman Lifestyle Podcast or any other spin-off series Thursday show, send me a bio about yourself, everything that you do to my email, kenYPGENT@gmail.com, or hit me up on social media, Ken_Gentleman. I repeat, Ken, KEN_Mr. Gentleman, GENTLEMAN, and we set something up. Check me out on the Premier Boys Podcast. Myself, Aaron Quito Sands, Star Rider Rod, and Long Live the Chief Molly Mal. Season 4 premiere of the Premier Boys Podcast this Wednesday at 12 a.m. Season 4 premiere of the Premier Boys Podcast this Wednesday at 12 a.m. Yes, those Premier Boys are back. You can also check out other shows from the Premier Powerverse. King Talk with Aaron Sands, hosted by Aaron. King Talk Sands every Friday at 12 p.m. Star Time Podcast, hosted by the Star Rider Rod, every Monday at 12 p.m. And the new show, Welcome to the Trilogy, hosted by Long Live the Chief, Mighty Mal, coming soon. Check out and support all shows on the Premier Podverse. And of course, add me on Good Pods, Ken, Mr. Gentleman. Y'all already know Good Pod Kids and many independent podcasters. We can rate each other's show. We can see what everybody listens to, and we have the charts. Due to this recording, we are not on the charts at the moment, but continue to get us back on the charts and continue to support the Gentleman Lifestyle Podcast. And also check out the official website of Mr. Gentleman Lifestyle Podcast, www.realmrgentlemanlifestylepodcast.com. Y'all, we could check out every episode of Mr. Gentleman Lifestyle Podcast. Y'all can watch every videos of Mr. Gentleman Lifestyle Podcast, from the audio version from Mr. Gentleman Lifestyle Podcast TV and the Mr. Gentleman Fact Quote of the Day. We drop every Mondays. Y'all gotta check out every guest profile who been on Mr. Gentleman Like That podcast. All 64 guests, and we do have more guests on the way. Check out every guest appearances that I've been on, and check out my 2 latest guest appearances on Star Time Podcast and Better Call Daddy Podcast. Also, buy some merch at tpublic.com. Just search Mr. Gentleman Like That Podcast, and y'all can buy some hoodies, shirts, mugs, and many more. Or y'all can buy through the website. Buy some merch to support Mr. Gentleman Like That Podcast, and support the website www.realgentlemanlikethatpodcast.com. And also, thank you everybody that sent an anniversary message. I can't name y'all name by name because pretty sure even after the episode is released, more people do go to bring in an anniversary message. But once again, thank you everybody who sent in an anniversary message from people I know, some people, friends, pocket friends, and everything. Each and every one of y'all really means a lot. And thank you for joining me on this journey. We will be back next week for the Royal Rumble prediction episode. Aaron Keaton Sands, Lola Chief Molly Mal, and she's on the show next Saturday at 12 a.m. And then on next Sunday, we'll be back on our regularly scheduled program. Another episode of The Gentleman Like the Podcast. We got a chef coming on the show by the name of Chef Ashley A. Torres. This is going to be a fun conversation. And I did my first test tasting on the show. So I can't wait for y'all to check that out. And yes, thank y'all for tuning in to The Gentleman Like That Podcast. Thank you for tuning in to me for the last 5 years of The Gentleman Like That Podcast. Have a good day or night whether you're listening to this episode. Happy 5-year anniversary to Mr. Gentleman Like That Podcast. Yeah!
Happy anniversary, Ken, Mr. Gentleman Lifestyle Podcast. I wish you many more blessings, love, and success. From Chef Ashley.
Hi, my name is Jailan Salah from Egypt. I run the J Days podcast and the J Reviews podcast too. And I want to wish my friend Ken happy 5-year anniversary to Mr. Gentleman Lifestyle Podcast. Ken is really one of my best friends. I had so much fun talking to him on the Mr. Gentleman podcast. And it's always a surprise. We always have so much fun. We talk about movies, talk about good stuff, and it's a great place if you want to listen. I'm just so proud of you, Ken, for going all the way and just hanging on for 5 years and just doing your amazing work and interviewing people and being your lovable self. So stay positive in your light and happy anniversary.
Hey, yo, what's the word? Long live the chief. They call me Mally Mal, but we are here to talk about 5 years. 5 years of Mr. Gentleman Lifestyle Podcast. My boy, my brother, not my boy, Mr. Gentleman himself, Ken, I congratulate you. I salute you. The consistency, the drive, the will to keep it going for everybody out there, man. You're special. This podcast is special, and I hope it stays special for years and years to come because, oh yes, my brother will be continuing, my brother will be growing, and my brother will do it B.I.G. for B.I.G. Let's keep it up. 5 years in, Mr. Gentleman Lifestyle Podcast. Peace.
Hi, my name is Rolanda, and I'm from Brooklyn, New York, and I wanted to say happy 5th anniversary to Mr. Gentleman Lifestyle Podcast, and to my nephew, Ken. I'm so proud of you. You've done a great job, and thank you so much for having me on to share my story. It was wonderful. Keep up the good work, and God bless you and keep you. Aunt Rolanda.
Hey guys, this is Coach Danny of the Coaching Out Loud podcast. I just want to say happy 5th year anniversary to the Mr. Gentleman Lifestyle podcast. Congratulations, bro. I am so excited about your anniversary. There is more great guests to come, more episodes, more great topics, and the sky is the limit. And I'm so, so proud of you. And the best is yet to come. So keep soaring, keep going after your dreams. God bless. Cheer!
This is Shar Bliss, and I want to wish Ken the gentleman a happy anniversary.